In this video, let's learn how to pass data from a parent component to a child component. You may wonder, why do we need to pass data from a parent component to a child component? Assume we are building a blog application. We will likely need a component representing a blog post, like here, blog post component. We want all the blog posts to share the same visual layout, but with different content, of course. Here is a scenario of passing data defined in the parent component to a child component. The parent component app has the data, like the ID, title, and the content of a blog post. So the parent component needs to pass the data to the blog post component for rendering. This is where props come in. In the next video, we'll talk about the other data flow direction. But now, let's focus on from parent to child. Let's go to VS Code and implement this. First, let me create a Git branch for this Vue concept, so it will be easier for you to review the code later. Git branch. Let's call this Vue components props. Git switch. Okay. Let's work on the child component first. Let me quickly define the blog post. First, let me define a message. This is the blog post component. Then here, let's show this message. And down here, let me quickly define a CSS class, blog post, background color, aqua, padding, for example, 10 pixels, margin bottom, 10 pixels. And here, I want to display the ID, title, and content of a blog post. But we know that those data, they are defined in the app component. So let's come here and define those data. Let's first import blog post. And then here, I'm going to delete this part and use blog post. All right. So in the child component, we need to get ready to accept or receive the data from the parent. How? Through props. So here, I'm going to define 3 props. Define props. Okay, please note that you do not have to import this method from Vue, because define props is a macro function that is available everywhere. To receive an ID, title, and content in this blog post child component, we must declare them in the list of props this component accepts using this define props macro. So this define props receives one argument. It is an array. And inside, there are 3 props here. So the first one is ID. The second one is blog post title. And the third one is blog post content. Note that we declare long prop names using camel case. So that's the convention. So once the props are defined, then we can use them as regular JavaScript variables in the template. And we can use them in the mustache notation. So for example, here, we're going to use h2. And we're going to put ID here. And this will be blog post title. And here I have h4. It has blog post content. All right. So as you can see here in the template, we're referring to the 3 props: ID, blog post title, and blog post content. In Vue.js, once a prop is registered, we can pass data to it from the parent component as a custom attribute. So let's go to app. Recall that there are 3 props, right? Then we have 3 additional custom attributes for this blog post tag. The first one is ID. For example, here, let's put 1. The second prop is blog post title. And let's pass a value. What is a muggle? And third one is blog post content. And here I can put something like a muggle is a person who lacks any sort of magical ability, ... Okay, we're done. Let's launch the project and see. Great, it works. We successfully passed 3 data from app to blog post. Now here, in addition to declaring props using an array of strings, we can also use the object syntax. So here I'm going to show you an alternative way of defining props. So let me comment out this. You see it's not working because props are not defined. I'm going to show you the second way to define props. Define props. And this time I'm going to pass an object to it. And in object, let's define 3 properties. ID, and here I can put the type of ID, for example, number. And then blog post title, and this is a string. Blog post content, which is also a string. Okay, so as you can see, it works as well. For each property in the object declaration syntax, the key is the name of the prop, while the value should be the constructor function of the expected type, like number, string. This not only documents your component, but will also warn other developers using your component in the browser console if they pass the wrong type. So as you can see, in the app, ID is supposed to be 1, but we pass it as a string. But there's no problem for blog post title and a blog post content. So here is a warning. It's not a big deal, but it's a warning. Okay, so let's go back here and comment out this and uncomment this. As you can see, we can easily access those props in the template. Declared props are automatically exposed to the template. What if I want to use those props inside the script? Can I use it here, like this? Console.log ID. Can I do this? And here, if I refresh, press F12, it will see ID is not defined. So it seems like we cannot directly access the props in the script. Okay, so here is what we can do. Define props actually return something. Let's receive that in a variable, props. Then how do we access the ID? Very simple, props dot. Okay, now refresh. As you can see, we have the ID. Can we have the blog post title? Of course, it's right here. So define props returns an object that contains all the props passed to this component, so we can access them in the script if needed. And of course, here you can define as many props as you want. And by default, any value can be passed to any prop. Number, Boolean value, string, object, and array. All kinds of values can be passed as props. Okay, so let's go back to the parent component. So let me talk about a naming convention here. Technically, you can use camel case like this, ID, blog post title, blog post content, when passing props from a parent component to a child component. It works fine. However, the convention is to use kebab case to align with HTML attributes, because HTML attributes are in kebab case. So let me show you. Let me copy this, paste here. Instead of using camel case, let me use blog dash post dash title. It still works. Here, blog post content. So line 2 to 6 is equivalent to line 7 to 11. And I recommend you use kebab case for the attributes. So here is a small summary. We use Pascal case for components that defined by ourselves. For example, blog post. But for props, we define them in camel case in the script of the component, like this. So this is camel case. But when we use them in the parent component, we use kebab case. So that's a convention. So a quick summary here, passing data from parent component to child component using props. First, define props in the child component. ID, blog post title, blog post content in camel case. Once the 3 props are defined or registered, then we have 3 additional custom attributes at our disposal for this component element. And this is how to pass data from parent component to child component. Okay, so in this simple example, we hard-coded the ID, the blog post title, and the blog post content here. So those values are static. In a more realistic scenario, the ID, title, and content are fetched from the backend and saved maybe in 3 variables in the script down here. In other words, the props should be dynamic. We dynamically assign the value of a variable to a prop here. Let's work on that. So first, let me define some data. Let blog post ID is equal to ref, for example, 2. Let blog post title is equal to ref. And here I'm going to copy and paste a title. Paste. Harry Potter and the Cursed Child Broadway production suspended until April. Okay. Then next, let's define the content. Blog post content. Ref. Paste. Okay. So we have 3 ref variables here, and I want to pass them to ID, blog post title, blog post content. So to make it dynamic. All right. So let me copy this and paste here. Now this time we cannot hard code those values. So let me delete all of those. And let me put HR here. Okay. Can I pass the data like this? Blog post ID, blog post title, and here blog post content. So I'm passing the 3 variables to the 3 props. Can I do it? If you refresh, what happened? So the 3 variables, they are treated as string literals, as is. We're not getting the values from those 3 variables. How to fix that? Yes, vbind. So here, let's add vbind, but I'm going to use the shorthand, colon, and here, colon, and here, colon. All right, now, as you can see, the syntax color also changes, right? They're no longer green, the string green, they're actually white here. That means that's the variable, blog post ID, blog post title, and blog post content, as you can see here. All right, next, as the last example of this demo, let's work on an array of blog posts. So first, let me copy and paste an array of blog posts. Let posts ref, and here let me copy and paste an array of blog posts. Paste. Okay, so each blog post has the same structure, ID, blog post title, blog post content. Okay, so here, let me put HR. let's use v-4 to iterate through each post in this array. So here we have blog post. Okay. And here we're going to use v-4 post in posts. Okay, so as you can see here we have 1, 2, 3, 4 because we have 4 in the posts. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, but I do not want to show nothing. I want to show their ID, title, and content. So how? That means we have to pass 3 values to ID, blog post, title, and so on. So let's do this. ID. How do I access the ID of a post? Oh, very simple, right? I just set an answer, post.id. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. But you know this post is actually from the v-4. Now, next one is blog post title. Post.blog post title here. Then blog post content. Post.blog post content. All right, so we're done. From here, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now remember, every time you write a v-4, it is always highly recommended to also provide a key. And in this case, it's post.id. Okay, so don't forget this one, line 22. Now this is complete. There is a small thing that bugs me here, is that this blog post element is just too long. We need to define several custom attributes here because there are 3 props. In this small example, there's no problem since there are only 3 props, ID, title, and content. What if there are a lot? For example, besides ID, title, and content, there are published date, author, number of likes, and so on. Let's say 10. That means we need to pass a bunch of props one by one in this blog post element. That makes our code pretty long and hard to read, right? What if we forget one? It turns out that we can bind multiple props using an object. And here's how. If you want to pass all the properties of an object as props, you can use v-bind without an argument. Let me show you. So let me copy this and paste here. Let me comment out the previous examples. All right, very simple. All in this v-4. So what I'm going to do is, let me delete all of those and simply just using v-bind post. Here, this syntax. v-bind without an argument. There's no colon, so that means there's no argument. v-bind without an argument binds all the properties of this object as attributes of the target element. But you have to make sure that, let's go all the way down here. Okay, the properties here, ID, blog post title, blog post content, those 3 names, they match perfectly to the 3 props. ID, blog post title, blog post content. If, for example, I change this one to ID and save, okay? Now, unfortunately, the ID of the first one will not be shown because here is ID, but we don't have ID as prop. What we have is ID, okay? So that's something you should pay attention to, is make sure the properties of this object you want to pass match the names of the props in this component. Next, I want to show you Vue DevTools. Let's press F12. You refresh, make sure everything is fine. Then let's click Vue DevTools. All right, so here we have app. And here we have blog post. Okay, so Vue DevTools also shows us the props that we define in a component. As you can see, blog post has 3 props, ID, blog post title, and blog post content. If you want to specify the type of a prop and the default values of a prop, Make sure you read the prop validation section in Vue's official documentation. I included a link to this section in the description of this video. Prop validation helps make your project more robust and maintainable. The last topic about Vue Props that I want to discuss is one-way data flow. This is super important. All props form a one-way down binding between the parent property and the child one. That means when the parent property updates, like ID, title, and content, recall that they're defined in the app component. If they change, they will flow down to the child, but not the other way around. This prevents child components from accidentally mutating or changing the parent's state, which can make our app's data flow harder to understand and maintain. Let me show you a demo in VS Code. I changed the previous code demo a little bit. So I put a background color in the app component. So here is the app component. It is orange, and we have a padding, 5 pixels. And inside, there are two child components, blog post, and they have exact same content. And also, in the parent component, it's also the same content. So the same blog post is displayed 3 times. Once in the parent component, and twice in the child component, blog post. So here are the data. First, let me show you the one-way data flow. Here, let me define a button. And let's call this change blog post title. I'm going to change this value, blog post title, in the parent component. And it is very simple. Let me get add click. Blog post title will be a different one, a different title. Okay, so let me refresh. So let me click change blog post title. I'm going to change this value here. I want you to pay attention to this title in the parent component, this title, and this title in the child component. So click. All right. So that proves my point. When the parent data changes, it will flow down to the child 1 and child 2. What about the other way around? Can we change blog post title in here and here? Let's give it a try. So let's go to blog post. And here we do the same thing. Button, change blog post title. Add click. Now here, we need to refer to blog post title. So copy and paste a different title. Okay, let me also open the console. Let me click change blog post title inside this child component. I want you to pay attention to this title, this title, this title, and also pay attention to the console. Click change blog post title. What happened? Only the title in this child component gets changed to a different title. It does not affect the parent and its sibling, right? Now let's change our program a little bit. So now instead of doing it here, let me cut this. And here, let's invoke a function. Let's call this change blog post title. And then down here, let's define this function. Let's do it here. All right, but remember, you cannot do it like this. You have to use props. Recall that define props returns an object that includes all the props. So we can use props.id, props.title, props.content. So here we're using props.blogPostTitle. So let's do this again. Refresh. Pay attention to the console. What happened this time? Well, this time it won't even let us change the title of this component. And we got a warning. Take a look at the warning. it says props are read-only. Of course, you can play the game and use my previous implementation, the inline handler, to change a prop of this component. But generally speaking, it is not recommended. Props are read-only. Don't change the props in a component, period. Based on the official documentation, there are usually two cases where it is tempting to mutate a prop. Number one, the prop is used to pass in an initial value. The child component wants to use it as a local data property afterwards. In this case, it is a good idea to create a brand new variable. In this example, constant counter, and use ref to wrap the prop. Please note, the counter variable is disconnected from future prop updates. Case 2. The prop is passed in as a raw value that needs to be transformed. In this case, it is best and recommended to define a computed property using the prop's value. Again, don't change the prop. As you can see, in this example, we're not changing the prop size. Instead, we're computing a normalized size based on the initial value of the prop size. So again, do not mutate props. Okay, next, let's apply what we just learned to the Hogwarts shopping cart project. In the previous topic, we copied the static HTML snippets into the 5 components. Now, let's decide where to put the data. What data? Recall that in our Hogwarts shopping cart application, there is a username, like here, Harry. And also, there is a list of shopping cart items. There is also a Boolean variable called hideDetails that controls whether to show or hide the details of the order summary. Let's put the username and the list of shopping cart items in the component shopping cart, and this hideDetails Boolean variable in the order summary component. Let username ref, and here is Harry. Let shopping cart items ref, and here it should be an array. Let me copy and paste the data into this ref method. Paste. Okay, so there are 5 cart items. Let's go to order summary and define a Boolean variable, hide details. And by default, it is false. Then the next task will be passing data around. Let's go to the slides and do a quick analysis. As you saw earlier, username and shopping cart items are defined in the shopping cart component. Let's figure out which component needs these 2 data. Inside shopping cart, there are 3 child components: cart title, cart list, and order summary. The cart title component needs to render the username. Fine. The shopping cart component passes it as a prop to the cart title component. The cart list component needs to render the shopping cart items. And the order summary component needs to compute the order summary like subtotal, shipping estimate, tax estimate, and total. So the shopping cart component passes the shopping cart items to both the cart list component and the order summary component. How does a child component receive the data from the parent component? Yes, props, right? So we need to define props in cart title, cart list, and order summary. Okay, understanding this image, let's go back to VS Code and implement this data passing. Let's start with cart title. Define props. Cart title needs username, so just put username here. Then let's replace this hard-coded username with username. Okay, we're done with cart title. Then how to pass the username to cart title? Let's go to the shopping cart component. we can pass this username to cart title in a custom attribute, colon, username. All right, don't confuse these two. This username refers to this prop here. And the value here refers to line 17, the username ref object, Harry. Since Vue version 3.4, if the attribute has the same name with the JavaScript value being bound, the syntax can be further shortened to omit the attribute value, like this. But I will continue to use the old school way. Okay, like this. Next, let's define props in cart list and order summary. So here is cart list. Define props. Cart items. Let me copy this and go to order summary. Okay. Then how do I pass the shopping cart items to these two components? Same, use props. Cart items, shopping cart items. Copy this and paste it to here. So let's work on order summary component first, and then we'll come back to work on cart list and also cart list item. In order summary, we need to use computed properties to compute subtotal, shipping estimate, tax estimate, and order total. So here, let's define 4 computed properties. Let subtotal computed cart items. Well, you cannot directly use cart items because it is a prop. To use a prop, we need to first put the return value of define props in const props. And here we can use props dot. No problem. But this is a bit tedious. Every time I use a prop, I have to use props dot, right? So we can take advantage of a feature in JavaScript, destructuring assignment. Cart items. So this means we're only interested in the cart items in the props. Well, there's only one prop, so of course, that's the only one I'm interested in. Then I no longer need to use props dot. You can use cart items just like a variable you defined in this script. Now let's compute the subtotal price. Dot reduce accumulator item accumulator plus item dot price times item dot quantity 0. That's the initial value of the accumulator. All right, next, shipping estimate. Subtotal. If it's greater than $10,000, the shipping estimate is $100. Otherwise, $50. All right, next, tax estimate. Subtotal times 0.088%. And finally, we can compute total. Subtotal plus shipping estimate plus tax estimate. Then let's scroll up. As you can see right now, everything is hard-coded, right? So let's replace those with the computed properties we just defined. Subtotal, shipping estimate, tax estimate, and total. Next, let's work on this toggle button. So here at click, we're going to toggle the value of hide details. The text on the button depends on the value in the hide details variable. So let me cut this. And here I'm going to use a mustache notation, hide details. If this is true, show details. Otherwise, hide details. And here, let's add a class for this div. Make it vbind. And here is an object. The name of the CSS class, it will be effective when hide details is true. And the CSS class name is hide order details. Okay, so if this is true, then this class will be put on div. Otherwise, this class is gone. All right, then let's test. So let's test this button, hide, show details, hide, show details. Very good. As you can see here, the subtotal, shipping estimate, tax estimate, total, they're all correctly computed. Okay. Let me close this, and let's go to cart list and implement cart list. So right now, we just put 2 cart list items, but really, the number of cart list items to show depends on here, this prop, cart items. So here we should use a v-4 to loop through this prop, cart items. So here will be cart item in cart items. And don't forget to have a key, cart item dot ID. Okay, next, I'm going to pass each cart item here as a prop to this child component, cart list item. Item, cart item. Okay, that means we need to define a prop called item in the cart list item component. So let's go to cart list item component. So here, let's define props, item. So now we have the individual item, maybe a dragon liver, maybe a golden snitch, and so on and so forth. So let's put the values in the right place. Everything now is hard-coded, right? Let's start with the image src. This one should be item.image, but we have to use vbind. So here, it should be item.product name, also vbind. So let me copy this. Same thing here, item.price. And for here, we need to consider 2 possibilities, in stock and on backorder. So let me copy and paste. So the first one is in stock, second one is on backorder. And let me change this one as well. On backorder status. Also change this icon to hourglass half. Okay. Well, if you do like this, both in stock and on backorder will be shown. So here we're going to use v-if item dot is in stock. And here is v-else. And here, let's use item.quantity. And of course, here I have to use vbind. All right. Let's launch the project in the browser and test. Okay, so it looks great. Next, let me press F12 and inspect this page using Vue DevTools. Okay, so here app contains shopping cart contains cart title, cart list, and order summary. So let's click cart title. As you can see, here is the prop username. It is from shopping cart right here. So here, if I change the content to 1, 2, 3, let me save. Okay, now as you can see, here is Harry 1, 2, 3. Let's look at this cart title component again. Now the value in the prop is Harry 1, 2, 3 because of the one-way data flow. Any update to the username will flow from the shopping cart component to the cart title component. Okay, for cart list, there's a prop, cart items. For order summary, it's the same array, right? So the original list is right here in the shopping cart. It flows to cart list and order summary. So it flows to two components. Our next task is to implement the buttons, minus, plus, and the remove button, and also this input box for quantity. So when we interact with those elements, this order summary will change accordingly. Then how? We're going to implement those in the next video. Now, let's go back to Learn Vue 3 with Bingyang project and do a quick summary. In this video, we introduced Vue components props. Props are a mechanism to pass data from a parent component to a child component, allowing the child to receive and use this data in its template or logic. Props are defined in the child component and specify the expected data that should be passed from the parent. This feature is essential for building reusable and maintainable components in a Vue application. By the way, Vue enforces a one-way data flow between the parent and the child component. Data flows from the parent to the child component. This means that props should not be modified or mutated directly within the child component. You may wonder, what if the child component really needs to modify a props value? In that case, the child should emit a custom event to inform the parent component of the desired change. We'll discuss that in the next video. Next, let me push this branch to GitHub. Pass data to child components with props. See you in the next video.